Ramona?
I remember her reminding me of Darcy and
Yeah, you were at Glenda's.
yeah.
Okay. Now, Ramona was 5'9", and so was Sissy. Now, my Aunt Lowell was 5'9". She always bragged about she was 6 feet tall with her 3-inch heels on. So I always thought when I was little, they called me Little Lowell. Mom and Daddy did because I acted like her. And she was, like I said, she was my favorite aunt. She was really, really nice, and she was real good to Grandma and everything. And people took advantage of that. They one day she was crying because something happened, and I had an aunt that was her sister who took everything. I gave my grandma a watch. There's a lady at their nursing home jumped on her, and she's kind of nutty, and didn't even leave in Grandma's room. She lived across the hall. She decided she didn't like Grandma. Grandma was in her 90s. Jumped on her and beat her up, and it broke her glasses and her watch. And she told me she really missed her watch, but she couldn't. So I went home and I had a bulletin that my boss had given me. It was still worked and it was still running, had a sweet second hand on it. But my husband had given me a watch, kind of more of a designer type, and I was wearing it. So I went home and got my bulletin and took it back to her. I lived at Norman. She lived at Seminole, which was 40 miles away, but I took it back to her. Next time I was down there, my aunt that I didn't like said, "Oh, I took the watch. Grandma didn't need it. She can't see anyway. And her glasses were broke. She didn't get them fixed. Social Security or insurance would have paid for either one of those. Well, at least for the glasses. The watch they wouldn't have fixed. But if you just replaced the watch with a little kid's, well, it had probably TikTok, but I was going to say a kid's toy watch, something that Grandma would be used to, but she had worn that same watch since 1944. Mom and Daddy bought it for her before he went overseas, and it still ran.
So, do you
So
have
she was.
any good Nana stories for us today on YouTube?
You want my stories on YouTube?
Yes, you remember we did this last Sunday.
What story would you like
Oh
for me
well,
to
you
tell?
said that you would tell the one about the little girl that got hit.
Oh well, I did tell it. Do you want me to tell that one or something else?
Well, you can tell that one, and then we can talk about any other stories you want to tell us about. We are here to listen.
Oh, okay. Well, I lived in Denver when I was 2, and I turned 3 about the time we left after my 3rd birthday. But anyway, the reason I know all this is because my brother Al is 3 years younger than me. My birthday's in October, and his is following mine in October. So he was born when we left and went to California. My dad was out there with a job, a government job, and he came and got us when Mama had the baby. And we went on a train from Denver to Amarillo, Texas, and stayed at a dude ranch, which my great uncle and his daughter owned. Her name, I don't remember her name for sure. I was thinking Beatrice, but I think that was Mama's sister, or cousin. But anyway, uh, we went by train to Amarillo and went from there on to California. Daddy drove a car from there to California. I don't know if he left his car there and we picked it up, or if he bought one before we went back out there. But anyway, we lived in this apartment house, and because my grandmama and grandma got into it, and Mama moved out. She was living with her mother until she went after Al was born. Anyway, I was 2, and Glenda was little less than 1. Well, she was 1, but she was born in. She might have been. Yeah, she was 1 by the end. Uh, anyway, we lived in this apartment house with Mama and us 2 kids, and there was a kind of an alcove-like thing that went up in the apartments, and we were on the second floor, I think, and that's the way I remember it. Anyway, on the other side, we were on the side that where the door opened downstairs, and there was a balcony in our apartment. And then over across, there was a balcony in the one across the way from the entranceway. And this old man was there, and I say old because I was three. Everybody that was older than three was old. Anyway, he was there. It was in a wheelchair, and Mama's had TB, but I don't know because I don't think they would have let him out in the public like that with TB. Back then, my aunt got when I was 6, and the Red Cross made her go to Tallahassee and stay where that's where they were recuperating and sent people with TB back then. Well, I think he might have had emphysema or something like that, but they didn't know it. And he was at home and he babysat. He had a daughter. Her name was Bonnie, and I believe she might have been a little bit older than me, but it seems I remember her being between me and Glenda in age. So she was somewhere around 1 and something, and maybe she may have been 2, but she was not the same as we were. And her daddy watched her. Her mama worked, so there was a store across the road from us, and this was a busy highway because I'll tell you why. There were truck drivers coming out of the mountains with vegetables that they took to market. Anyway, so my mother, who was in her, she was 23 at least, let me and Glenda play outside in the front yard of this apartment building, and Bonnie's daddy said she could go get candy. I went and asked Mama. She said, yeah, if he was going to watch us, he would watch and tell us when we could cross the street. You can imagine a 3-year-old going across the highway. We did. I just can't fathom it now, but a 3 and a 1, because, well, maybe she might have been a 2 by then, but 2 little kids that size and the one in between us, and he's going to watch us, and we're going to cross the street and go to the candy store, which was just probably a grocery store, but we got candy there. Anyway, this man was watching us, and he was going to tell us when we could go. Well, Bonnie was not a very nice little girl. We minded, and we were to watch him. When he said go, we could cross the street. Well, he started yelling, don't go, and Bonnie turned around because we were facing the street, go to her daddy and stuck her tongue out and did like a raspberry noise and turned her back and dashed out across the street. Glenda and I didn't take a step. But anyway, when she did, this truck, a vegetable truck came through, and they were going to market. These were big trucks. I don't know if they were 18-wheelers back then, but they were big vegetable carrying trucks, and it was loaded. And there were streams of them. That was why we had to wait till he told us we could go. And when he started to tell us not to go because there was no cars coming for a little bit, and when he saw there were, he said, don't go. And she turned around, did this, and dashed into the street. And I remember this vividly. It's very traumatic. The truck ran over Bonnie's head. And, of course, it killed her immediately. But I say that he didn't even know he hit her. Because when he was coming, we were standing on the side of the street, and she dashed out and under his wheel, actually. He couldn't have avoided it, but even by stopping. Because I hit a little dog one time, and I know what the situation is with that. Anyway, he went on, and Mama said her daddy was very bitter because he was a hit and run because he didn't stop. Well, apparently they finally caught him because they found out who it was and stuff. But I say he didn't know he hit the child. He was in a truck, and he was looking ahead, but my mother didn't drive. But she said, oh, yeah, he knew. but I don't think he knew that when it happened. He might have later on realized and turned himself in. But he was on his way to market, and they have to go just as fast as they can. And I remember the truck as being real high sided, and the carrying part of it. I don't remember it being like over covered or anything. But he was on his way to market with a load of lettuce. And so, yeah, most of the things I can remember when I was very young were rather traumatic. One of them, when we lived with my grandmother up there, she had two dogs or more. She had a big old dog. I remember it as an Airedale. It was a big old shaggy dog in her backyard. And we went out the front door. I don't know if we didn't have a back door or what, but went out the front, and I was going out to play with the dog. So I had to walk the length of the house to the backyard because I was going down beside the house. Well, I got about halfway there, and Grandma had some boards with nails in them. So I was barefoot, so it must have been summer, but I stepped on a nail that went all the way through my 2-year-old foot. I mean, from the bottom to the top, right behind the toes. And when they pulled the nail out, put me in the house. My mama did not believe in doctors. She was a faith healer. And my grandmother, she didn't even use medicine. My grandmother, or her mother, insisted that she take me to the doctor. She didn't do it. They got to an argument over it. Well, Grandma caught Mama not looking, and she took my foot, washed it out in the sink, and poured methylate on it. And I thought it was pretty. I can still remember seeing the design it made on my foot because she poured it, and it made little places where it ran down and around the places on my foot. They were like 2 or 3 going towards the front, towards the right, front, and left, and one probably back towards the back a little bit. I still can remember it. I know it was so pretty, and I was proud of it, but Mama didn't like it, and we moved from Grandma's house when Mama was pregnant with a baby, with 2 other babies, and she didn't drive, to an apartment house. That's how we happened to be in that place. What was the other one you were saying?
Oh,
I
well,
told you about the plum seed. Do you want me to tell you? Yeah, you want me to tell that one?
yeah, Mom, like I said, you can tell whatever story you want.
Well, honey, I don't know because I told you some of them, and I don't know whether there's some that you would like to hear or not.
Well, part of the reason why, like I told everybody, after losing friends on YouTube, I have learned that YouTube is a good place to document stuff for family history. For, like Nicholas, he barely knows you.
I'll
If something happens
about
to you,
family history, Dion, that I wish I had corrected it, but I didn't. There used to be, and I guess it's still there, Ancestry.com was on the internet, and I looked at it and listened to it, and they had my great grandparents. Well, they had my ancestry's names wrong. My grandma was a Smith. Her daddy was Alfred Smith. He lived in Arkansas, and the place they lived in was up by, I think, called Muscle Shoals. I'm not sure, but they made a lake there because the river ran from, I think the Illinois made it, I'm not sure, but ran through the mountains. They lived way up in the mountains, and there were 2 little towns, one called Vidalia and one called Sedalia, and Grandma was from one of them, and Grandpa was from the other, and I don't know which was which, but I sent off, got their their marriage license at one of them. Anyway, he was the justice of the peace, and of course back then he had all the power up there because they didn't have some judge in that little town, in that little area. Anyway, Grandma's daddy was Alfred Smith. Her mother's name was Martha Jane Cynthia. Cynthia was her last name. My grandfather's name was Grisso, and they lived in the other place. So I'm going to say It's like Grandma lived in Vidalia, and Grandpa lived in Sedalia, and I don't know if I've got that right or not. But anyway, whenever somebody went to Ancestry.com, they had, my grandpa was from Germany, but they couldn't find the name Grisso. They found one similar, so they thought that was our ancestor. And they couldn't find a Cynthia. Grandma's name was my great-grandma, Martha Jane Cynthia, they said was Martha Jane Cynthia. Whoever did it, my grandmother called it Cynthia and not Cynthia. And I took it to mean Senti, and so did they. Anyway, the reason I know is because Grandma told me I was filling out a baby book, and Grandma told me it was Cynthia. Well, I said, Grandma, how do you spell it? And she wrote it out on a piece of paper for me, Cynthia. And the people back then, I guess, changed names because we had my husband
Seriously.
had a family member named Talifero, and they called it, the family called it Tolliver. So sometimes they didn't say the same words the same way we do. And so my great grandma was a Cynthia, and that was, to me, obviously a French name. Now, they lived in Alsace-Lorraine, and that's the place that borders Germany and France. But before that, the Grisso family came from Italy. We were Italian, and went to live in Alsace-Lorraine, and they came to U.S. from Alsace-Lorraine. And it changed hands according to who won the battle last. The Germans and the French skirmished over that little province or whatever all the time, so it changed hands a lot. But they came from Italy. And my uncle had researched family tree long ago before the Ancestry.com came about. So I heard that before. Anyway, she was a French lady, I believe, so came from Italy. That they didn't even look here. They said they found it, but they thought that was one of them. So, .com.
Well,
okay, now where was that?
With that being said, I was telling Diego that I've been talking to you, and that I had shared, stuff about him to you. And he goes, I hope it was all good. I was like, Diego, you got to realize we're all Italian. Forget about it. Earlier today, and he got a good laugh out of it. I was like, he was like, he goes, so you guys are Italian? I was like, yes. And I gave him the last name, and he goes, oh, yeah, you definitely are Italian.
Who, me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, well, partly. I'm also part McCullough, and they told me that was Scotch-Irish. The Scotch and the Irish didn't get along, but I met an Irishman. His name was Wesley Boyd, and one day we were talking, and he asked, and I told him my mother's maiden name was McCullough, that we were Scotch-Irish. He laughed, and he said, how do you spell McCullough? And I spelled it for him. It was the McCulloch. And he said, oh, and it didn't say anything. I said, well, am I Scotch or Irish? He said, Scotch-Irish. So I was told right there, but her last name was McCullough, and it was spelled like that chainsaw is, and we usually say McCulloch, but hers was pronounced McCullough. Anyway, what else do I know? I know a whole lot of little trivial things. For my 3rd birthday, we left California and come back to Oklahoma. My daddy went into World War II, and he left his job, joined the Army, and we drove from California back to Oklahoma. Now, to drive back, Mama said I think during the war most of them were. But Daddy special ordered from the factory a blue car that was the latest. It had a push button starter instead of a well, back then all the cars I'd seen too had cranks. You cranked it. It looked like a tire tool. Well, I think it was, and it fit on a bolt in the front. And they cranked it, and they turned it real fast. And they said people got their arms broken doing it because once it starts going, the motor makes it go around. Also, we carried a bag of water in a canvas bag, which was probably about maybe 2 to 2.5 feet wide and same deep. It was really big in the front of the radiator of the car because ever so often we crossed the desert, we had to stop put water in the radiator, and it also helped to keep the radiator cool because that's why it hung in the front of the car, in front of the everything. And so on the way home, we didn't have all that. We had this brand new car that's up to date, had everything in it, and we came to Oklahoma in that car. And I was still free. I got back home to Oklahoma, and we went to my grandparents' house and stayed there, and all the family had to come because I had to see Daddy off to the war. Anyway, Grandpa had a cow that was born on my fourth birthday. That's how I know it was 3 when we came back. So we didn't stay long in California. We lived in a little old trailer that was like an Avion. As a matter of fact, it probably was, but it was khaki colored, a military issue, but it was a government issue, and it was a whole trailer park full of people with little kids, most of us, because we had a lot of kids to play with. And there was a big fence that was probably as tall as a house at least, chain link fence, and it was on between us and this base, the military base. And the soldiers were over there, and they marched all the time, and you know how they say up, 2, 3, and so forth, and did that. Well, we copied them. We little kids, we would get us a stick and hold it up, and we march around and do the same thing they did. And they would talk to us through the fence, but we weren't allowed to go over that far. And most of the little kids went over, and they gave them candy and gum all the time. Well, they'd given us anything, we had to throw it away because my mom and daddy wouldn't let us say things like that. Anyway, lo and behold, I found out after I was an adult, I didn't even know, we moved from there. The government was building apartment houses up the hill from us. We could see it, and all the kids were talking about, we're going to move in one of those, and so forth. But we didn't know. Well, we moved in one. There were 3. He had a wife and 3 kids, and that's where they moved us. Anyway, found out that this military base was an Italian prisoner of war base. And those were Italian prisoners of war. We thought they were good soldiers, you know, but they were prisoners of war. And I said, what did they think, that they were going to swim the Atlantic to get back to Italy? But no, the thing is, they probably were more afraid of sabotage, you know, passing information to another person in a submarine or something. Because there were several times that they had submarines that were caught in our waters out past the international water line and up close to the base. And I think, well, of course, the Atlantic would be Germany, and the Japanese were, we called them Japs, but the Japanese were on the California side. And they did say after the war, there were several times that they had submarines that were up at the waterline. I think they said the Atlantic. Anyway, I guess they were afraid they would be sabotaged if they put them over there, that they might pass information on. So they had them clear over in California. But the Italians didn't like the war. They loved it here. And California, of course, the temperature and climate was similar to what they had in Italy. So they loved it. I had an Aunt Annie and I don't know who she was because my uncle had a sister named Annie. I mean, he was uncle by marriage, and I always thought it was his sister when they talked about Annie. But later on, I found Grandma had a sister named Annie out there, and somebody named Annie that lived in California that went with us out there married an Italian war. They escaped all the time. A guy got out. He married my Aunt Annie and stayed in the U.S. and didn't go back to Italy. And so, yeah, we had some times here. And of course, as old as I am, I can tell you a lot of stuff, but I can't remember what I want to tell you.
Well, you were telling me the other day you had a lot of stories to share, so.
Yeah, I have a lot of stories. My favorite one, and this I guess will always be, my mother was very religious, and when she was a little girl, before she got religion, I guess, she lived with her mother in Colorado. She was born in Greeley, Colorado, and whenever my grandma and grandpa got a divorce, he came back to Oklahoma and lived. Anyway, when my mom was 9, she had a sister who was 7, about to turn, because she was only about a year later, like me and Glenda. Her birthday is in February, and her sister was in October on my birthday. Anyway, sister was probably getting pretty close to 8. But they said Dutch was 7 and Mama was 9, and Uncle Jack was 12 or 13. They came back to Oklahoma. Pearl sent them to their daddy. It was the beginning of the Depression, and she sent them down to their daddy to live. Anyway, and she also had several kids of her own from her first husband that were with her. Anyway, he had his sister move in with her Aunt Ada, and she had a daughter a little bit older than Mom. I don't know if she was older than Jack, but I think she was. Anyway, she was old enough to know better. She put plum seeds in my mama's ears when Mama was little. Mama was like 9. Anyway, I thought, oh my gosh, she must have big holes in her ears, but she didn't. And then I realized the only plum we ever ate was called a Chickasaw plum or a sand plum, because they were these little plums that they used about this. Some of them are kind of almost like a bush that grow down here in Oklahoma, and they were about as big around as a cherry, and the seed was about the size of a cherry, because we made plum jelly all the time from those, and we picked them every year. And I don't know why I thought of a big plum when I heard the story, but I finally realized that I was wrong. Anyway, she put the plum seeds in Mama's ears. Well, they couldn't get them out. Of course, they're not, because they dropped them all the way down. Now then, Grandpa took Mama to the doctor to have them removed. The doctor punctured my mother's eardrum and destroyed it, removing the plum seed. He got the seed out, I guess, but it destroyed her eardrum on her ear. And to me, it was her left ear, but I don't know. I was kind of little when I heard all this, and even if I was 20, I was pretty much younger than I am now. But I was little, like 5 or 6 years old when I heard about it. Anyway, she screamed. The doctor slapped her. Grandpa took Mama from the office and left. Mama never went to a doctor again. First of all, she was afraid of them. And then she got religion somewhere later on. Because in the meantime, she ran off the gypsies one day because she liked mushrooms and they knew how to identify them. And she was going to learn to identify mushrooms. I don't know how they got her back, but they did. Anyway, she told me about running off with the gypsies when she was a kid. But anyway, so when she was in her 30s, now we're saying, I know she wasn't over 10, and I probably was still only 9. She had anorexia, and she was in the mental hospital. And her doctors finally decided, this plum seed, she was really almost deaf, that the plum seed rattling around in her ear was part of her problem. And they decided to take it out. Well, Mama didn't want them to. begged them not to, because she knew when they destroyed the other one what happened. She was afraid that she would not have any hearing at all, because that eardrum never healed back. It just left her without any hearing on that side. Anyway, she begged them not to, and they still said, yeah, they were going to do it. They wanted to cure her. They wanted to get her out of the hospital. Well, she said, I went to bed crying and begging and pleading. And she said, I was crying and finally prayed. She said, the only thing I knew to do was pray. And she prayed and prayed. She said, I prayed all night. But that's not true, because she told me she went to sleep. And when she woke up, there was something strange on her pillow. She picked it up. She said, I ran down the hall screaming, praise the Lord, hallelujah, and all that. And they held her hands to my nightgown flying. And they finally pried her hand open. And there she held the plum seed. After 20 years at least. And they had tried everything. They'd put oils in her ears and stuff, but they couldn't put anything in her ear. Things like oil and turning her head. And that plum seed had never come out until that night. And she was doing that. I said, if that had been me, that seed would have been cast in gold and put on around a chain on my neck. But maybe the hospital kept it, because that was really a miracle, and God did it. And that's one reason that I have no doubt that the man exists, and that we're all going to go there one of these days.
Well, your own daughter has her own faith story, so.
Oh, what is that?
Well, 31 days in ICU.
Huh?
I said my 31 days in ICU.
Honey, you weren't there 31 days. It was 11.
It was longer than that, because whenever they woke me up, I remember telling them it's been 25 days since you guys put me asleep.
Yeah, you were there. I think they woke you up on Labor Day. You were there, but you were in ICU only 11 days, because when you woke up, they wanted you to they told you to go back to bed and go to sleep after they moved you out of the ICU up to the cancer ward. They said they wanted you were running up and down the hall with Michael and another friend, Barry, were chasing you up and down in the wheelchair in the halls of the hospital. Y'all were having a ball. They told you it's time to go to bed. You need to sleep. You said, I don't need to sleep. I've been asleep for 11 days. You knew exactly how long you've been asleep. You knew everything anybody's talked to you about and everything. But you were absolutely asleep. They had you in a drug-induced coma, and we didn't know that, but I knew now. But it was a drug-induced coma, and you were asleep. And they didn't wake you up hardly at all. They let us walk in and see you, and your bed would move. And they say she doesn't like her bed because your body would react, and all those machines they had on you trying to keep you awake. Now then, while you're in ICU, your doctor was a Catholic priest, and he met me in the hall as I walked in. Well, it wasn't the hall. As we walked out of the hall into the ICU part of the building, you all had little individual rooms around, but there was a large area when you walked in where the nurse's station was and everything. And your doctor was there, and I don't know, I think Daddy was with me. He said, if you folks are praying, folks, you better pray, because that's the only thing that will save her, because her kidneys are starting to fail. And he'd already told me earlier that if your kidneys failed, he said you were as sick as you could possibly get. If your kidneys failed, we would lose you. And he said, if you're praying, folks, you better pray, because your kidneys are starting to fail.
Well, I also had that air bubble in my chest cavity, too. I said I also had that air bubble in my chest cavity, too.
Well, honey, it was all because you had, they put intubed you. You had a clip on your tongue holding that tube in place. It actually made a hole in your tongue, and you couldn't talk to us. And of course, nutrition got was through the veins, and they had you all hooked up to all these different medicines, plus machines that told what your such how you were. But anyway, yeah, when they told you you needed your sleep, you said, "I don't need any sleep. I've been asleep for 11 days." But yeah, it was. You got out, I think, on Labor Day, and so I was at work at Brahms in Ardmore when you went to the hospital. And even though it seemed a lot longer, it was only 11 days. But yeah, it seemed like an eternity to me. I could hardly breathe. I was so terrified. I slept on the floor in the waiting room, and it was marble. But I didn't have any place else to sleep. I wouldn't leave. I would go eat lunch, which they had a cafeteria at the hospital that closed while we were there. But I wouldn't. Somebody tried to get me to go out, and I wouldn't even go outside the hospital. I was afraid to breathe. Your daddy left and went down home to get money and feed the animals. And while he was gone, they told me that they were taking you out of ICU to X-ray. They had X-ray machines, but they wanted the big regular things. It was in another place, and they were going to take you out, and so they were doing. But you were extremely in danger at that point that you didn't know whether you'd make it. So they sent me to a little room, which was I want to say chapel. I don't know what it is, but it's where they sent people who had a family member that died, and they wanted to tell them. They sent me to that room. I was all by myself. Nobody else was with me. Daddy had gone. Well, Michael and his family and everybody came, and we stayed in the room, and nobody came. We stayed and waited for them to tell us that you were back in your room or didn't make it. Well, finally, somebody came in and said, "What are y'all doing in here? Get out. You don't belong in here." So we got out in the hall, and we went down, and you were awake.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I remember it. And I remember up there, upstairs in the cancer ward, you were real high on, I think, the 10th floor, and you could look out the window and see all over Oklahoma City. And all of a sudden, I looked out, and I thought, it's a beautiful world. Everything's great. My daughter's awake. My daughter's well, and we're going to be all right. I never felt so relieved and happy about anything in my life.
Well, in that we ran to Annalise, and we also wound up getting the Reverend, what was his name, to pray on me or pray for me on national TV.
Oh. Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts had a big church, and he was a faith healer, and he had a university in Tulsa, and the people that came down to Oklahoma City, there were people from Kansas that had people in the ICU. It was built real funny. It was a big room, and it had these little rooms all around the side, on both sides and across from the nurses' station. And so they would ask what we were doing there, and we would tell them. And of course, you were a little girl. Most of them were old people that were dying. But anyway, and there was a boy there who had been in an accident up by Woodward, and I think he was in a coma, but he was alive. But he was in the ICU. But other than, and he was an older boy. He was a driver. But I don't know. You know, he wasn't. He wasn't an old adult. He was high school kid or something. That was you two were the only young ones in there, and people would ask who was here, and they were people that knew Oral Roberts were one of the crowd, and they called and put you on a prayer list that went over internationally. Everybody all over the world was praying for you, and that didn't hurt anything. Didn't hurt our feelings. And they had Daddy had a brother, half brother, who was a preacher. He had died, and his wife still lived in the city. She came and prayed for you. We had that, and Annalise Crawford. Dion, do you remember Annalise's daughter's name?
I can remember Tiffany's name. I cannot remember Annalise's.
Uh,
I can remember the granddaughter's name. I cannot remember her daughter's name.
the granddaughter's name. Okay, that's what I want. The granddaughter's
Tiffany.
name. What was the daughter's name?
I can't remember.
Oh, I thought. Well, what was the granddaughter?
Tiffany was the granddaughter.
Oh, I couldn't remember. Yes, Tiffany was the one I wanted to know. I didn't know her mother's name either. Yeah, she lived with Annalise. And, of course, Annalise laid her hands on you and prayed for you when she went in. And she came out of there. You were still in a coma at that time. And she came out. She said, your daughter's going to be okay.
Welcome in, Miss Paula. Hey, FarQ.
Huh?
Oh, I was saying hi to my chat.
Anyway, that's about all I can think of right now. God performs miracles today, the same as He did thousands of years ago. He didn't forget us. He didn't abandon us. If you ask, you will receive. It tells you in the Bible if you read it. And my favorite Bible verse is John 3:16. God so loved the world, He gave His only Son, that whosoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have everlasting life.
Now I have I have a question. How old was Grandpa Grisso before he passed?
91.
I went to Wendy's and didn't get you or me anything.
Oh, Nicholas come act like he was crying, saying Michael went to Wendy's and he didn't get me or you anything, which is a lie.
They didn't get him anything.
Oh, they do this to me all the time. Like earlier, I met them at the store, right? They had went out to eat at IHOP. It's his son's birthday.
This is Catherine's birthday.
Well, it's also his son's birthday.
Oh.
And they went to IHOP. They got
Michael wants you.
well, then you come talk to Nana and everyone on YouTube.
I don't want to.
He doesn't want to talk to me.
Come here and talk to her.
Huh?
Yeah, he's going to talk to you.
I'm here. Hi.
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 How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Are you doing good in school?
Yeah.
Great. What?
I don't know.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Is this Dion or Nicholas? I can't tell.
It's Nicholas.
I thought it was. Yeah. Well, what do you have to say to me today?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Oh, you like school?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
You what?
I don't know.
You don't know.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do. Do you like school?
Kinda?
The answer to that is yes. I love it. You're supposed to work real hard to make good grades.
I do.
Huh? Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Apparently there's 3 people watching right now.
You're watching what?
Nothing.
I didn't understand, hon.
Oh, I said nothing.
Oh. Well, let me talk to Mom again, okay?
She went to talk to Michael, so... Yeah,
Huh?
she went to talk to Michael, so, like, you gotta wait until she comes back out.
I have to talk to Michael.
No! She's talking to Michael.
Oh, she's talking to Michael.
Yeah.
Well, then tell her I have to go.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I love you. Take care. And watch out for Mom. Okay? Bye. Are you still there? Hello?
Yeah,
Who is this?
me, Nicholas.
It's still Nicholas?
Yeah.
Well, I said goodbye. I'm going to hang up because she has to call me back and she needs to talk to me.
Okay.
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 I love you.
Okay.
And did you have a good time on your camping trip?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Here,
I'll let you go then.
go,
Have a good evening.
go eat your
Bye.
French fries and watch for Michael's steak to get done. And when it's done, take it to him. Well, I was expecting her to stay on while I was gone. But y'all, that's my mama. And y'all heard Mr. Cole. So I guess I want to invite him over. Y'all, I hate doing this. It hasn't even been an hour. Ugh. But I had nothing prepared today. I was expecting her to talk a little bit longer. So y'all, till next time, catch you later.